Hey everyone! So, what we're going to do today is take an entire issue of Desert Health News and distill it down to the absolute essentials for modern wellness. We're going to explore four key pillars: our physical health, the food we eat, our inner mental state, and, super importantly, how we connect with each other. Ready? Let's dive in. So, the magazine's editor kicks things off with this fantastic question. What's in your inner sanctum? And it's not just about your room or your home, right? It's about that private world inside all of us, our health, our thoughts, our real well-being. So let's keep that question in mind as our guide while we explore how to build a healthier inner world.
Okay, so before we jump into the solutions, we first have to get a handle on the problem. We're going to start with a health snapshot of one particular community, the Coachella Valley. But honestly, the challenges they're facing, they really reflect what's happening pretty much everywhere. This is the why behind everything we're about to talk about.
And right away, the scale of the mental health challenge is it's staggering. Almost a quarter of adults in this community have a diagnosed mental health disorder. And to put that into perspective, get this. The report points out that depression is actually more common than cancer there. That is a huge, critical piece of this whole wellness puzzle. But you know what? It's not all bad news. Not at all. This chart shows a huge success story. Because of policy changes and some great local efforts, the number of uninsured adults just plummeted. It went from 1 in 3 people down to less than 14% in only 3 years. That's a massive step forward for access to care.
And then we've got this, a pretty stark reality check. 61%. That's how many adults fall into the overweight or obese category. It's really a local snapshot of a national epidemic, and it makes it crystal clear why we need the practical solutions that we're about to get into.
Okay, so keeping those challenges in mind, let's explore our first pillar, the absolutely incredible new tools and technologies being used to treat the human body, from fighting cancer to dealing with just common everyday ailments. Now this is a genuine game changer in oncology. For decades, our main weapon was chemo, which, is a pretty toxic approach that can damage the patient right along with the cancer. But now, immunotherapy is totally different. I love this description one doctor used. He says it's like waking up your own immune system like a sleeping bear and getting it angry enough to go after the cancer itself. And the results? It's doubling the survival curve for some cancers. Just incredible. And check this out. Here's another fascinating innovation. The same tech that's used to break up kidney stones is now being repurposed. They're using external sound wave therapy to treat erectile dysfunction by stimulating new blood vessel growth. And it's working for 80% of the men who've tried it. How cool is that? So we go from super high-tech to something that's just really practical. For one of the most common complaints out there, an overuse knee injury. The advice is timeless because, well, it works. It's the RICE method: rest, ice, compression, and elevation. A super simple, immediate strategy you can use to get that pain and inflammation down. So it's amazing that we have all these new medical tools. But what about the stuff we're putting into our bodies 3 times a day? What's really on our plates, and how is it actually affecting our energy, our mood, and our health? Let's try to decode the grocery store a little bit, because it can be so confusing. 100% organic means exactly that. Organic means you're getting at least 95% organic ingredients. But natural? That's the tricky one. It just means no artificial ingredients. The animal it came from could have still been given antibiotics or hormones. Knowing the difference here is so key. Let's talk about breakfast for a second. You know that horrible mid-morning energy crash? Well, there's a growing trend that's all about starting the day with healthy fats instead of those carb-heavy foods. The whole idea is to completely shift how your body is generating energy for the day.
And here's what that shift really looks like. A breakfast built on whole foods and healthy fats can give you that sustained energy all morning, so you avoid that big spike and then the inevitable crash that you get from a carb-heavy meal. It's just a fundamental change in how we think about our morning fuel.
And hey, for your overall health, you can't forget about vitamin C. It's a total powerhouse. It helps repair tissue, form collagen, and gives your immune system a major boost. And as you can see, you've got way more delicious options than just oranges to get what you need every day. All right, we've covered the body and our fuel, so now let's pivot to the mind. How do we even begin to manage the stress and anxiety that comes with living in our hyper-connected, always-on world? This quote is, well, it's chilling because it's so true. Every ding from our phone, every single notification triggers a release of the stress hormone cortisol. It creates this little excitement loop that software companies can literally track and use to keep us engaged, or maybe more accurately, to keep us addicted.
So, how do we fight back? Well, meditation offers one path, and it starts with this really simple concept called the gap. It's just the silence between our thoughts. There's a story about an author who was convinced he didn't have any gaps, just an endless train of mind chatter, but he learned that finding that space is where real insight can be found.
And I think this image is such a beautiful metaphor for that whole idea. Life is full of these transitions, right? Big and small. By learning to find that gap, that little moment of stillness, we can navigate these challenges not with anxiety, but with a much deeper sense of wisdom.
Another really powerful tool is using affirmations. By repeating simple statements, something like, "My body knows how to heal itself," we can actually start to rewire our thought patterns. It helps shift our mindset from being a passive victim to becoming an active participant in our own well-being. It's all about taking that personal responsibility. So far, we've focused a lot on the self, but this final, crucial pillar of wellness isn't individual at all. It's about recognizing that health is really a shared journey. It's a community effort. And to really get this, we're going to turn to an incredibly powerful personal story called Shay's story. She's a cancer survivor, and she shares how for a patient, the battle continues long after all the treatments are done. It becomes this new, unseen battle with fear and anxiety.
And this quote from her story, it just gets right to the heart of it. In that long, unseen battle, your support system, the friends and family who stick around, they become the most important part of healing. They are, in her words, the true heroes.
And Shay's personal experience, it is absolutely backed by science. Study after study shows that social interaction and being engaged in your community are directly linked to a lower risk of dementia, less depression, and a longer, happier life. Connection isn't just a nice to have, it's essential for our health.
So we're going to end by turning the focus back to you, but with a new perspective. We've seen that true wellness really integrates the body, the mind, and the community. So the final question is this. What is one small step you can take, not just for yourself, but to help build health in your community?